Hi, so my name's Jordan By. I'm a postdoc at the University of Manchester, and the title of my poster is Supercharging Proteins with Small Polyvalent Anions to Offset Aggregation. So controlling protein-protein interactions is critical for the biopharmaceutical industry, as unfavorable protein-protein interactions often lead to protein phase misregulation, which in turn can cause precipitation, aggregation, unfolding, and all of these can render a therapeutic ineffective. So the data in this poster highlights how relatively low concentrations of small polyvalent anions such as sodium triphosphate and adenosine triphosphate can be used to reduce temperature-induced aggregation of proteins by supercharging them. So we wanted first to investigate whether or not these small polyvalent anions could supercharge our protein molecules. So we measured the zeta potentials of our proteins with different concentrations of triphosphate, adenosine triphosphate and sodium chloride. And we see that when either triphosphate or adenosine triphosphate were present, the net negative charge of our proteins increases, so they become a lot more negative. And we term this effect supercharging. And then next, what we wanted to do in the bottom panel, we wanted to see how ATP and triphosphate, sodium triphosphate, influence the thermal-induced aggregation behavior of our three proteins when they're supercharged. And what we see for alpha-chymotrypsinogen is that they have almost no effect. There's very little difference between alpha-chymotrypsinogen that's been supercharged with triphosphate and ATP versus sodium chloride. However, for ovalbumin and BSA, we see that low concentrations of sodium triphosphate and ATP significantly reduce aggregate growth compared to when sodium chloride is present. So this does show that potentially for these proteins, supercharging could be used to reduce aggregation behavior. So we wanted to try and explain the mechanism, and what we found was that it looks like either potentially protein charge distribution and arginine lysine content of the proteins are important factors to take into account whether or not these small polyvalent anions will offset aggregation. So proteins such as alpha-chymotrypsinogen that have an anisotropic charge distribution or a low arginine content, often the small polyvalent anions will have little effect on their aggregation behavior, whereas for proteins like ovalbumin and BSA that have a higher arginine content and have an isotropic charge distribution, it seems that these polyvalent anions are much more effective at reducing aggregation of these proteins. So obviously we need to do more research before we can say with certainty which mechanism causes this, or whether or not it's both mechanisms. And we'll do this with hopefully investigating more proteins and more polyvalent anions. So, thank you.